we're going to talk about community and what it means to be a community together. And that's kind of the way in which, we've been talking about community specifically with respect to politics, which Pastor Kotz has defined as not so much the political view as much as how we relate with people. So this is more in line with relating with people. And also just with the idea in mind of that we are called to be, have a purpose when we gather together. And so this will, what I want to present here is what I call the lettuce passages of the Bible. And so this is community lettuce. And it's taken from Hebrews chapter 10, verses 19 to 25. And so I'm going to put these verses up and make some comments as we go along, and then kind of make some applications to it, kind of at the end, and really invite you to know that we're all called to be part of a lettuce patch, okay? That we can all engage in this together, and we're called to engage in this together. And the purpose of us being together is not so much that we have a end result on society, but that we have an influence on society and the world around us. So let me start with verse 19, and it says this: "Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the holy places by the blood of Jesus, by the new and living way that he opened for us through the curtain, that is, through his flesh, and since we have a great high priest over the house of God." This is like the ground in which the lettuce grows, okay? It's talking about having a confidence in your life, and that this confidence comes from the sacrifice of Jesus, and it's new. It's not a matter of us trying to become something, more about us letting God allow us to experience who he made us to be. And the idea here that I really appreciate is where he says he opened for us through the curtain. So it's kind of like we don't have to pull the curtain ourselves. He opens it up and invites us to come in. And he goes further, it says, that is through his flesh, which is basically that he's opening up his heart to us. That the curtain was that we would just know someone on the basis of what we see, but actually God is inviting us to be able to know a person even more than what we can see on the outside, but really be involved in the inside. And he's inviting us to be able to do that with each other, to be able to open ourselves up so that people can see what is going on the inside and not just on the outside. And so to do that, he has also said that he is a great priest over the house of God. So he is able not just to understand that, but have authority over what's going on. And so there's a combination here of power and love, okay? And it's perfectly walking with both things. So the next verse is the first lettuce. This is the basis, and the first lettuce is this: let us draw near with a true heart in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. It says to draw near, which to me represents a coming to meet or coming closer. And so when we open ourselves up emotionally, that's a step toward greater intimacy than just a physical relationship. So what I believe this first lettuce deals with is having a pure heart, a true heart. And it comes with emotion. So the first place I believe when God invites us into being together as a community is, can we be real with what we feel? Can we be real with our emotion? Because that is where he wants us to know that he has power. The world will tell us that it's things that can change your emotions and things. But God says, no. What you do is you bring your emotion there, and what he does is, it talks about sprinkle clean. You know, when I think of sprinkling, I don't think of a hose. I kind of see a shower head maybe, or something that is many drops. But sprinkling also to me represents something gentle. So not only is the power of God to bring about cleansing, but it's bringing about cleansing with a gentleness. And part of being able to engage in your emotions is to have the will to do that, but also to be able to be gentle with it and not to try to force it, not to try to make yourself get past it, but to be able to have it, as it says here, sprinkle clean, that whatever is there would represent the pure and genuine thing that is there and not something else. And then it talks about sprinkle clean from an evil conscience and our bodies washed with pure water. Washing is not gentle, right? If you're going to wash something, you're either going to take it and scrub it, or the image I get is when I was growing up, there was a washing machine, and it had this glass door thing that you could see the clothes and stuff, and when the washing machine was washing, you watched the clothes just get tossed and turned and all this pretty violent kind of thing. And as a little kid, that was exciting to me because I liked action. So I liked, when my mom would put the clothes in and things, I'd go in there and watch it, just go around. But that is what it takes to get the clothes clean. Because if you just threw the clothes in and you threw it in with water and you put in soap and you just left it, it wouldn't get clean. Get really wet. Maybe some of the soap might soak into some of the fabric, so it might smell better, but it wouldn't get clean. It would take that action. And so God also has that aspect. He's gentle, but he also has action involved with cleaning. Because cleaning is not necessary. To me, cleaning is not something that is necessarily easy or pain-free. I think cleaning takes courage and it takes a willingness to undergo pain. So that's the first lettuce is about emotion. That the first place that God wants us to gather together in and be involved with is in our emotions with one another, our feelings. The second thing is, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering. So the verb there is hold fast, which is a decision or a determination. So to me, that has to do with will. That you have to be willing to be committed in the relationship, in the journey. So it does take a certain amount of willingness to, as it says, hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering. Which means that when we decide to do something, that doesn't mean everything always becomes easy, even if it's the right thing. I would argue that if you decide to do the right thing, it's probably going to get harder. It's probably going to be more difficult, because doing the right thing led Jesus to the cross. And so there isn't, the reason we do the right thing is not because it's going to make things easier. We do it because it's the right thing. And so we have to hold on to, it's called a confession of hope, which means that we do it even though it doesn't get better, but we have this hope that eventually it will. And that's the other part of this. It says, for he who promised is faithful. By holding on to that confession, we're trusting him. Not in what we see, not in what we feel. We're trusting in Jesus and holding on to him. And the third one is, so the second one was will, okay? The third one is, and let us consider how to stir up one another to love and good works, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. So the verb there is consider how, which has to do with the mind, okay? That we can be real with what we feel. We can decide on what we want to hold on to, but then we have to put all that together. And we put it all together, not just in respect to ourselves, but with one another. Because the whole start of this phrase was let us. So it's already implying that this process is not an individual process. It's a joint, it's a community process. And so the purpose of coming together is to be able to consider or to think how to stir up one another to love and good works. And basically, the love and good works comes from having dealt with the first two, having dealt with the emotions and having dealt with the will. That it's a combination of those things that lead us to say, okay, how does that work out? How can I be helpful to others? And it also says it can't be done alone. It's not an individual thing, it's a community thing. And the reason is it says, as you see the day drawing near. And I think Pastor Kotz talked about the word day here. The day of the Lord is when God returns and God comes back. Because God is coming back. Jesus is coming back. And so in order to have ourselves prepared and have ourselves clothed with the right attire, right, is to not neglect coming together and not being together. Because in heaven, we're all going to be together. And so if we didn't learn it down here, we're going to be in eternity learning it. And it's a lot easier, I think, down here than up there. So, those are the three lettuces, okay? And so as a review, I have this to bring to you from Hebrews 10. From verse 22, the first head of lettuce has the verb draw near. And I said that involves with emotion. That that emotion cannot be processed just by yourself. Emotion has to be processed together with someone. And so it's a drawing near. And even I would argue, too, to be able to be honest with yourself about what you feel. Because we all grow up with what's called a false self. And that false self has been learned in our past. And it's served a function maybe in that context. Like my mom grew up in the time of the internment camp, and the way she processed that hardship was to become very caring. And she would do things for other people, and her mother also would rely on her to take care of the children. My mom grew up with 8 children, and there were 3 sisters. One of the sisters, my mom was the eldest sister. The second sister, from what I understand from my mom, contracted some kind of eye infection that probably was cancer. And so she lost her eye. And my grandmother couldn't stand to be with her in her bed because she was moaning and things. So it fell on my mom to do that. And so what my mom did was she would be by my aunt's side, her sister's side, every day until she died. And in that was the way that she felt that she was handling the pain and the suffering. And given her circumstances, given the context, there's nothing wrong with that, okay? Except that when you get older, and that's the way you always, whenever you have pain and suffering, that's the way you look at things, to try to find something to either you're caring for it or you're doing something about it on a tangible basis. It becomes where you don't really engage it. And so my mom, part of my time with my mom is being able to let her feel things and say it's okay, that she's a good mom, which I need to say more of to her, but that it's okay to not know what to do with something. Because my mom is physically healthy, but she's not able, her mind is pretty much gone, so she's not able to do tasks and things. So anything that she had always imagined carrying, like cooking or making the bed or doing things, she's not able to do. And so for her, because of that, she could no longer operate under that self when she was a younger child. And so the more she tries to hang on to that, what is called the false self, because that's not really who she is. Who she is she's a caring person. And she just doesn't have the same way to express that care. But the false self is saying that unless you can do this, that you are not complete. And so what she is doing is learning to be able to embrace who she is. The way she learns to be able to embrace who she is people like me, like having her son say that she's a good mom, having her son come and do things for her and just keep reassuring to her, I'm not doing this because I have to. I'm doing this because I love you and that you are worth it. So that's emotion, right? And in order for her to be able to process that emotion, in order for me to be able to process the things that went on between me and my mom, we have to interact. I can't just write about it or think about it, and that gets it solved. I have to interact with people. And so that's part of being the lettuce of emotion. Second head, I said, was to determine, which says hold fast, and I talked about it in terms of will. You know, it takes courage to be who you are, because the world will keep pushing you into that false self, that thing that, and let me say this too, because I missed it before. The false self is not sinful. In the time that it was taken on, it served a good purpose. But it was not meant to be permanent, because it's not a permanent part of who you are. It's just a means in which you could express who you are in that context. And now there's greater, now that you're in a different place, there's now bigger opportunities to be able to express that. You can keep doing the false self, right? My mom, throughout all of my, most of my adult life, was always looking for things to do for me. And because that was the way she showed love, right? And even to this day, she will try to think of something that she thinks I need and offer it to me. Like giving me a house, okay? Because she lives by herself. So she said, well, why don't you come live with me? And because she forgets that I have a wife. But anyway, that is part of her continuing to try to be handling things in that false self, where what God would invite her to do is be able to see her as being a loved child, no matter what she does, just for being who she is. She is beloved. So it takes a determination, though, to keep at that, because there are times in my life when, in my interaction with my mom, I have to choose to be in that frame of mind. Because there's a lot of other things I would rather do that I could justify as, well, my mom has this dementia. I talk with her. She's not going to remember any of it. What difference does it make? I could be talking to somebody else, and we could be going through the same kind of issues. But because they don't have dementia, I have this hope that it's going to change their thinking, it's going to influence them, and so there's some good outcome that's going to come from this. That's not going to happen in the same way with my mom. And so part of it is being determined to accept that the reason I'm doing this is not for the outcome, it's for the process and what it means to her right at that moment. And a lot of times, that is the hard thing to be determined to do in a relationship, is to just be present in that moment and not look to try to make it seem like it'll get better later, but just to be able to hold on to what's there. So that takes determination, that's will. And that takes other people coming alongside. I think one of the things of this World Series was there was all the mentions of everybody picked up one another, like the Dodgers players would say, that they would all be determined to win together. And there wasn't this talk of, well, I want to be the hero, but I'm going to help the person next to me continue to play, to be the best that they could be. And so that's basically where will needs other people to help us, to encourage us, to let us know that even if we're behind, that we still believe in each other. We're still going to play together. And then the last one is, the verb is consider how, which means to me, like, how do you put these things together? How do you put the will and the emotion all together? And that comes from being able to think about it, but also I believe it comes from being able to present it to other people and to think about it together. And maybe there's things that I know in my life that when I'm presenting something and someone gives me a different perspective, that allows me to see something that I didn't see before. And so that is part of how our mind becomes engaged in a group thing, not just an individual thing. So basically, all of these things, I believe, are maximized with this idea of we all need to be involved with each other at all these levels. At our emotional level, at our will level, at our thinking level. And only when we're willing to allow that to happen will there be a actualization of the potential that God placed in each one of us. That it doesn't happen individually, it happens in community. And that's the purpose of being together, is that we would all lift up Jesus in a church setting anyway. But I also believe in the world, that we would be like Moses found a burning bush, and that burning bush pointed him to Jesus, to God, and what God had. And one of the interesting things about that burning bush was it gave off light, but in and of itself, it didn't burn up. And so when we're out in the world and expressing the love of God, it's not where we have to burn ourselves out in doing that. It's where we allow the light of God just to fall on us and let the people see that, well, you don't burn up by being determined to do the good things. When things go bad, that you're able to bounce back. And part of that is having a community, to be able to pick. When we are weak, others can be strong. When we are strong, we can help the weak. So, I thought we could do a little time of reflection. And then what I'll do is I'm going to read the passage, but this time in a different translation. And then after I read it, I just invite the worship team to come up and we'll worship the Lord together. Okay? So I thought of 3 reflection questions, and they are this. What would stir you to more love and good works in your life? What do you feel you need or would like to see? Or who stirs you to love and good works? Do you have people who are able to speak that? And if not, maybe that's something to pray about, because I believe God has that resource for you. And then the last one is, who can you stir to love and good works? Is there somebody that you have contact with that maybe God is calling you to help stir to love and good works? So why don't we take a moment of quiet, and then I'm going to read this passage, and then we'll enter a time of worship. Okay. This is Hebrews 10 from the Passion, and it says this. And now we are brothers and sisters in God's family because of the blood of Jesus. And he welcomes us to come into the most holy sanctuary in the heavenly realm, boldly and without hesitation. For he has dedicated a new life-giving way for us to approach God. For just as the veil was torn in two, Jesus' body was torn open to give us free and fresh access to him. And since we now have a magnificent high priest to welcome us into God's house, we come closer to God and approach him with an open heart, fully convinced that nothing will keep us at a distance from him. For our hearts have been sprinkled with blood to remove impurity, and we have been freed from an accusing conscience. We are now clean, unstained, and presentable to God inside and out. So now, wrap your heart tightly around the hope that lives within us, knowing that God always keeps his promises. Discover creative ways to encourage others, to motivate them toward acts of compassion, doing beautiful works as an expression of love. This is not the time to this is not the time to pull away and neglect meeting together, as some have been formed in their heart of doing, formed the habit of doing. In fact, we should come together even more frequently, eager to announce, to encourage and urge each other onward as we anticipate the day dawning.